another episode of Commercial Property Roadshow. You're here with Helen Tarrant, and today I'm actually going to talk about what do you do when you have $500,000. I get asked this question all the time because I specialize in designing commercial property portfolios, actually any kind of portfolio, so we get long-term gains, right? So building our portfolio is a step-by-step process. While property might be a numbers game, certainly designing portfolio strategy is not. And without the strategy, the numbers mean nothing, right? How do you know whether you should make $20,000 of passive income, $10,000, $50,000? What works for you? Risk versus reward, right? So it is all about what you should do with your money in this current market, right? And it's, we see a lot of trends out there. People are buying NDIS properties. They want to go to boarding houses. They want to multi-tenancies. They want to do uplifts. They might be doing splitters, whatever it is, right? So how do you invest your $500,000, or should you just put it into a property fund? Like, what do you do, right? So going forward, we got to look at how is the best way for you to utilize that $500K. A lot of people think that $500K should be split up into two different properties. And I'm going to share with you why or why not in this video. If you had $500K right now as a deposit, let's say that may be a redraw or equity, or it could be cash, either way. And let's look at two circumstances. One, if you are not able to service, which means that you are now having to go for a lease doc loan. 65% LVR means 35% in deposit, 5% cost. If you're buying in Queensland, in New South Wales and Victoria, a little bit more in Victoria because their stamp duty is a bit higher. So that means that at $500,000 you can buy $1.25 million if you're buying those states. If you're buying the ACT or South Australia where there's no stamp duty, it goes a little bit higher. You probably add an extra 100,000 onto there, so it's more like 1.35 million. Now the decision is, what do you buy? Should you buy two at 600,000? Should you buy one at 1.25? Should you split it around the states? Should you do an uplift? What should you do? Now, obviously, every circumstance is different, and your unique circumstance will need to be assessed by myself or my team, my colleagues, to work out the strategy behind it. But ultimately, we're in this market where the most popular is somewhere between 800 to 1.2. And most people make the mistake of going backwards, where they have a deposit and they go, you know what? I'm just going to be conservative and I'm going to buy a $600,000 to $700,000 property. What that means is that all of a sudden you are in red ocean. You are competing with everyone else who have 200K, 250K and buying at the same level. Your returns are going to compress. Your capital growth is going to compress. Your stock is limited in the market. And really what happens now is that you're not getting the benefit of moving forward in your portfolio. One of the things to consider is this. Firstly, the way to split it up is to go the maximum for your buck for the value of the property. So for example, you go and buy an $800,000 property, if you want to do it this way, and regional. Right? You go to regional where there's a chance where you might still be able to get a freestanding property between 8 to 900,000. And then you might still have to wait a little bit, and you can get 8 to 900,000 yielding at 7% or a bit above 7% in a regional town, right? That foundation gives you the cash flow foundation, right? It won't have as much growth as a metro property, but unless leads you to hold the property on 100% finance. When I say 100% finance, I mean that the deposit actually came from a redraw out of one of your residential properties or another commercial, or it came out of a home loan that you get against the house. So you have to pay interest on it, right? 7% allows you in this current market to pay the interest on both loans, on the deposit as well as on the commercial loan, and also have a little bit left over. That gives you some cash flow stability. So allows you to hold and go for the long term, allows you to keep buying. Then you use the rest of it, which might be 400,000 or 500,000, and you go into metro and you buy something smaller. Look, you do have to wait a bit for that, but you could buy a small retail shop or a small office space, right? And that gives you the best of both worlds. It allows you to buy in regional in a different state to where you would buy in another state. So let's say that you are going to go to regional in Queensland and you're going to buy a freestanding building. Then you might want to go to Victoria, South Australia, or New South Wales, probably metro, and buy an office or a retail space, right? And vice versa. And what you would do there is that is your growth hold. So you might buy in at 6%, and all of a sudden you might be negative a little bit in this current market when the interest rate's trending about 6.4% right now on a lease stock loan. So you'll find that the commercial property that's in regional will support your metro property that you buy for 400,000 or 500,000, that negative, it will support it. Together, it's neutral and allows you to do the growth and the cash flow together. When the interest rate turns and drops, what you'll have is you'll have positive $5,000 to $7,000 on your metro, and you'll be positive $10,000 to $15,000 on your regional. And this way, you have, in 12 months to 18 months time, somewhere around $20,000 in positive cash flow after you service all the debt. Then you also have the growth component that is supported by the metro property against your regional, right? That is an option. Right? It's going to be a little bit more expensive for you to get in terms of legals twice, stamp duty in different states, your buyer's agency fees, just your due diligence, all of those things is going to be a little bit more expensive, but that is the outcome. That's number one. Number two, if you are using cash and if you are really good at generating new deposits, or that you're in a business of your own and you are looking at building that portfolio over, let's say, a 5 or 7 year period, and you can accumulate deposits a bit faster and you do have the cash flow, I would take that 1.25 million and stick it into a metro property. And I know that this sounds crazy, that you might be a little bit negative on a metro property, but let me show you why. So this recent property that we did in Molondina in the Gold Coast, and we'll find something similar to that. There's some other similar properties to that. And there's ones we're doing like a little ground floor office with like a psychology tenant in there in Brisbane, like key areas of Brisbane that has some growth. That property is about 1.2 million. Now, yes, and at the moment it's a neutral plus a little bit negative, so you're probably $50 negative, right? And you might go, I don't want a negative commercial property. But listen to this. It's only negative now with the interest rate being at 6.4% and you bought in at 6%, right? Remember when it used to trend for at 3%, we're at 6%, and now, right? So, for example, in an area like a Gold Coast that's at 5.5% before the interest rate starts to go up, and still staying at 5.5%, even with the interest rate at 6%, and now at 6.5% almost, they're still trading at 5.5%, getting it at 6%. You have to isolate the interest rate away from the property deal. The property itself is still above market in the purchase. Like, you're still ahead of market when you bought it, right? Which means that as soon as interest rate drops, the return in that area, the yield will compress again because there'll be a flurry of people coming back in, the demand will soar, and you end up being 5%, and you get an instant capital growth on it, right? So that in 2 years' time, even though you're holding out negative, and that might be $50 right now, a week, plus, maybe $100 by the time we hit 7% or 7.5%, ultimately, the gain of it, maybe potentially a 10% gain or more on the back end, means that you're going to pick up $120,000 on a negative of $5,000 or $10,000, right? And it still is a good deal, right? And that's what I would say if you're trying to move your portfolio forward. If you're still working and the cash flow of $5,000 or $10,000 not going to make a huge difference right now. That's what I think. Number two. Number three, if you are really strapped with your cash flow, let's say you have residential properties and they're negative. Your residential property is negative and you're going, well, what do I do? My residential property is negative right now. I don't know what to do with that negative residential property. Well, number three option for you is to take the 1.25 million at the 500K and stick it all into regional, right? Into regional. And you will buy in a large regional town. So large regional towns are going to be Albury, Wodongas, Woggers. It's going to be somewhere near Warrnambool. It's going to be at Townsville, Rockhampton, Mackay, be careful, Rocky, of Mackay, somewhere in Cairns, Bundaberg, areas like that, right? And obviously there's other larger towns around, right? But you stick it into areas like that, and you are going to get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of value. Freestanding building, multiple tenants, one tenant leaves, you still have an option of the other tenant. Then you have the possibility to tweak the rents. So let's say you tweak the rent, it goes up a little bit, then you end up with more cash flow, a little bit of tweak. You're not looking for something that you're fully, knocking down, refurbishing and putting new tenants in. You're looking for something that allows you a little tweak, maybe one tenancy out of the 3 or 4 that you might buy in the multi-tenancy that's underpaying or about to leave on a short lease, that you can put in a new tenant, do a refurbish, increase the rent on it. That is what you're looking to do. You put it in there. It takes you 7% up by 0.5%, 7.5%. Tweak it again, maybe year 2, bring it up to 8%, plus rental increases, you're probably going to get over 8%. All of a sudden, you have a lot of cash flow. When the interest rate changes from 6.5% to 5.5%, you're clearing $25,000 to $35,000 in cash flow. That is your cash flow drive. Still safe in a large regional town. You got your cash flow And what else you do is you take that cash flow and you plug the hole that you're in your residential, and you support your residential property so you can get to the hump on the other side where you get the growth out of your residential property. You use then the cash flow from your commercial, pull out the money, more equity from your residential, and you go again. So there are 3 ways you can use your $500,000. 1, split it up, metro and regional, right? And you do have to wait for that strategy. It will take 12 months to implement that strategy. 2, stick it into metro areas that you can always buy ahead of the market by at least 0.5%. And that only happens if you are going to be buying in metro at a yield that is going to be slightly negative. 3, you're going to stick it all in regional, where you are going to use that money and it's going to support you and your residential property portfolio so you can go again as soon as the rate drops, right? So 3 options, 3 really good options, but of course we have to dissect it further to look at the criteria of the property. So we can't just buy anything in regional. It's got to make sense where you buy in regional, right? You can't buy anything. And again, you can't buy anything in metro. You've got to make sure that there's history, buying above market. And when you split a property up, you've got to have strategy, right? And that's what we do. Strategy, Unicorn Commercial Property. Make sure, if this is important to you, hit the bell, subscribe, join one of our events, email us. We can look at those 3 strategies for you and work out which one's best for your situation in terms of growing it and accelerating your portfolio in the next 3 to 5 years. And also what will give you the good balance, make your property portfolio really, really accelerate, right? So helen@unicorn.com.au, hit the bell, subscribe, so in the next video I can share with you what happens if you only have $250,000, if you want to invest in self-managed super fund with that money. All of the things, I'm going to be releasing a whole series on this, so make sure you do tune in and subscribe. And I want to share with you also one more thing, that we have a challenge coming up, so look out in our social media. Do join one of the challenges so we can spend more time together. Meantime, I'll see you in the next video. Keep hunting. Bye for now.